Chapter 14 Helviste. Nora Frey smiled contentedly as she watched her lover leave the cabin. She would miss him, but it was best this way. Vila needed his time out in the wilderness, and she needed to focus as well. Dragons were temperamental creatures, and she would need time alone to build the relationship between the beast. If Vila was nearby, she would be overwhelmed with his nervous energy, while at the same time trying to focus on the dragon. The last thing she wanted was for Vila or the dragon to panic before she established a bond. Yes, it was better this way, she thought to herself as she put her hair back into a tight braid and sought out her warm white fur overcoat and hat. Once she was ready, she opened the door and forced herself to smile as she tipped the baggage handlers to carry her chest over toward the coach waiting for her. Son of Maltine, she was running behind. As she stepped off the ferry, she immediately regretted not having Vila's big hulking shadow looming over her. Now she had to deal with the slack-jawed stares. When Vila was with her, those slack jaws and big eyes would have quickly found something more interesting to fixate their eyes on, perhaps an oddly shaped cloud, or the sun. No matter. She quickly got into her carriage and shut the blinds for privacy. Before long, they came to the mountain fortress that overlooked the city. Part of her wanted to give the guards a tongue lashing for letting them pass without doing a proper inspection. But then again, she decided against it. Helviste was hardly like the borderlands down south. The only thing the guards and Helviste had to worry about was getting frostbite and making sure nobody stole their coal stockpile or their ice. Surprisingly, she had learned that Helviste's economy revolved mainly around trading and transporting huge blocks of ice down south to be sold for cold storage, or served as frosty desserts and beverages in wealthy, high-end establishments. Ice was big business. It was cheap and plentiful here, but every fishmonger and butcher needed it. So much ice. Cart after cart was being hauled to the docks to transport the heavy, fresh-cut blocks. Supposedly, bandits over here fought over ice and control over the plentiful frozen lakes. Helviste. If hell could freeze over, Nora was pretty sure Helviste was it. Once her carriage stopped, she got out and glanced around the mountain fortress nestled beneath the great Helviste lighthouse. Nora took in a deep breath and lightly prodded the curtain with her index finger to get a glimpse of what was waiting for her outside. As predicted and as dreaded, she saw column after column of men-at-arms standing at attention, waiting with their polished armor, shields, and spears glistening in the sun. Nora took in a cleansing breath. She wasn't sure what would be better, to either disappear altogether or vaporize the whole lot of them. Laughter. Nora bristled as she felt the warmth of laughter touch her consciousness. But it wasn't long before she closed her eyes and allowed herself to fall into the warm, mental, comforting embrace that she shared with her soul bond. Within it, she became aware of her guardian's zest, power, and love for life as he led his men, breaking the trail like an alpha wolf through the deep snow. Well, she couldn't see it exactly, but she felt it. Nora sent him back the warm embrace, planting a kiss on the nape of his neck and smelling his long black hair. She thanked him and urged him to return back to her safely, or she'd kill him. She left him with a bite on the ear, and he sent her lurching out of the carriage with a pinch on the bottom. The coachman wilted beneath her wild-eyed glower. "Welcome to Helvisti, Magi Frey," he squeaked. Nora extinguished the flame in her palm and regained her military bearing. She was going to make Vila pay. Once she made her way to the gate, she quickly spotted what she assumed to be fellow dragon riders that had come to greet her. She felt a lump in her throat. No doubt they already knew what tragedy had befallen her. Some, she could tell, already regarded her with disdain. When she approached them, they snapped to attention and saluted her. All except one. By the red arm badge with the rose and navigational star in the center, she was the head healer. It suddenly dawned on her that these 6 officers before her were in charge of her 8 battalions. But there should have been 8. While it stung not to be greeted by her fellow dragon riders, she would not tolerate her subordinates turning their backs on her. "I'm Major Grenwalds, in charge of logistics and heavy infantry. All are present and accounted for," Major Grenwalds thundered proudly. Nora blinked. She stared at the large, barrel-chested, heavy-set man. Heavy infantry indeed, she thought to herself. "Where are the rest of my officers?" she demanded. All were silent, all except her head healer in her bright red golden trim silk cloak, who let out a flippant, scathing sniff of disdain as she gave her a sidelong glance. Nora couldn't help notice how big her eyes were compared to the rest of her thin-faced, sharp flint-like nose. Her short, cropped hair didn't help soften it either. "I'm Treja, the head mender for the regiment. Major Rodriguez, who's in charge of the Arctic Light Infantry, is out with your sword caddy on their pilgrimage. Other than that, all are present," she declared. Nora felt her throat go tight. While she wished she could have her flogged, she couldn't. Menders were a class all to themselves, and Treja clearly had a grudge against her. Part of her wanted to take her aside and apologize, but she couldn't look weak. Not now. "Yes, but where is the rest of my regiment?" she demanded. Her eyes flashed toward Major Grenwalds, and then toward the short, skinny officer with an impish smirk on his face and the clipboard in his hand. "I'm Major Parvu, and I am in charge of supply and logistics. All present and accounted for, Magi," he declared, and saluted smartly after handing over the clipboard to the new battle mage. Nora glanced down. She felt her skin burn so hot she thought her face might peel off. This is it," she gasped. "Oh, we'll be getting new recruits soon," Major Grinwalds assured her. Nora sighed as she passed the clipboard back. She had been told she would be in charge of a regiment. It wasn't even half. The other thing that bothered her was that her depleted regiment only had 5 officers. This was an unlucky number. 8, like the 8-pointed navigational star, was preferred, but the last thing she needed was to divide her soldiers into an even smaller groups to satisfy her silly superstitions. Such a rash decision would create havoc amongst the existing command structure. Son of Maltine. If she did that, they would be calling 2 guards on patrol, a whole bloody squad, not to mention the payment issues that would arise. I have 500 men to patrol all of Helvisti province, she remarked. The thought chilled her and made her feel numb inside. We aren't called the Frozen Chosen for nothing, Magi, chortled Major Parvu. Nora closed her eyes and took in a deep, cleansing breath. Very well. I'll make do with what I have. Where is the Dragon Hall? She asked. Right this way, Parvu declared, and with one sweeping motion he gestured to the large, heavy doors in front of her. Nora brightened up and glanced down at the report. Thank you, Major Parvu. You have been very accommodating. Parvu beamed happily. You're most welcome, Magi, he saluted. Do you happen to have a list of the other Dragon Masters that I will be working with? She asked. A surprised look came over Parvu's face. No, Magi, I do not, he confessed. Nora wasn't sure if this was something that had never been requested before, or if he was disappointed in himself for not being adequately prepared. Regardless, she gave him her best, appreciative, understanding smile. After all, Parvu seemed to be very eager to help. She didn't want to discourage that. Not a problem. Have one of your aides bring it to me in the morning, she instructed. Parvu let out a tentative, nervous laugh. Forgive my laughter. That would be a horrible waste of parchment. You are the only Dragon Master currently in Helvisti, Magi, he explained. Time seemed to slow. The only one. The only Dragon Master in all of Helvisti. Nora wasn't sure how she felt about that. Being the only one. The only one. The only one in all of Helvisti. Perhaps Parvu was joking. She stared at him. She glanced around at the others. Either they had the best poker faces in the world, or they were telling the truth. Nora had fallen for pranks before, but this was a line too far. She turned. Not even the common infantry cracked a smile. All stared straight ahead, like tin soldiers staring into space. You mean the only Dragon Master in Helvisti City? Nora ventured. Parvu shook his head. No, the entire Helvisti province, he assured her. Nora strangely felt a heavy weight lift away from her shoulders. If this was true, the horrid shame and dread of having to share her story to the rest of the dragon riders about how she had lost her first dragon all but vanished. And then the heavy weight of responsibility hit her right in the stomach like an iron fist. She felt sick. Her legs felt wobbly. What happened to the others? Nora ventured. Parvu hesitated, but Treja, the head healer, was all too eager to share. They died, she announced with a cheerful grin. Nora kept cool and calm as she posed her next question. How did they die exactly? Tanner went missing last winter. Aelron died in an avalanche the winter before that, and Melrin was mauled by his dragon last month. I can go on if you wish. Treja chimed with a pleasant, sickly sweet and hopeful smile. Nora frowned. What is an avalanche? She asked. Oh, yes, it's like a rock slide, but with snow and ice. We have lost many good men to avalanches, Grinwald explained somberly. It's a terribly slow way to die. You should try it, Treja suggested with a venomous grin. Menders could do that. So long as they didn't endanger anyone, I could do almost whatever they wanted. The last thing Nora wanted was to go to General Gordon and complain her first day of taking command and how her healer hated her and made her feel bad and had called her mean names. While Trasia's behavior was absolutely disgraceful, she couldn't do or say anything about it without looking 10 times the fool. And yet, for the first time in weeks, Nora felt something awaken within her. It was beyond anger or hatred. Instead of getting angry, Nora felt herself stand a little taller, and she smiled at her new nemesis. "Perhaps I will. I just hope I may live long enough to redeem myself first." This only served to infuriate the headmender all the more. "Some things can't be repaid," Traja snapped, and then turned on her heel and marched off before being excused. Nora couldn't help but smile with grim determination. Traja, that horrid, bug-eyed witch, whether she knew it or not, was exactly what she needed. This was something Vila couldn't ever do. Vila was always on her side. But what Nora really needed right now was an enemy, someone she could figuratively grind into powder. Her poor sword companion had been bearing the brunt of her anger for some time. Finally, she had someone she could actually hate without feeling sorry about it after. "Shall I show you to your living quarters, Magi?" Parvu asked hesitantly. "Yes, thank you," Nora agreed. But the moment they passed through the gate, her hopes of finding some peace and quiet all but vanished, as Parvu nervously gestured toward the yurt in the middle of the courtyard. Nora was not above a cozy little yurt if she was on campaign or out in the field. But this, right now, when she was in the middle of the tremendous, bustling Helvisti capital city, a bloody blessed Helvistes in the gods-forsaken Helvisti province, this hut was not suitable for her rank or position. Her infantrymen had better accommodations than this. Her eyes darted toward the castle mansion's doors. The doors were locked and boarded up from the outside. "Did the menders put you up to this?" she demanded. Parvu defensively put up his hands as he attempted to calm her down. "It's not what you think," he assured her. "What is it then?" Nora demanded. "Well, your dragon is inside, and, well, it's not happy." Nora frowned. "In my house?" She pointed to the marvelous mountainside mansion. Parvu nodded. Nora took in a deep breath. The idea of a dragon living inside her house was... "I expect my horses inside my home as well?" she asked, with a sickly sweet sarcasm in her voice. Parvu quickly shook his head. There was a horse, but..." His voice trailed off, and he gave an apologetic shrug. He didn't need to finish the sentence. She already knew what that meant. Her new dragon was a public menace, and instead of putting it down, they had sealed it up in her house, and now it was her problem. "Who let it inside?" she asked. Parvu grimaced. "Nobody let the dragon inside, but General Gordon gave the order to keep it inside so it wouldn't get back out." "Again?" Parvu laughed nervously. "But that reminds me, General Gordon was going to explain your situation in more detail over dinner," he assured her. "When is that?" Nora asked. Parvu grimaced. "He has been expecting you. You may accompany me in my carriage if you wish," he offered. That was the nice way of saying that she was late, and to please hurry. Chapter 15, coming up next. Chapter 15, Unfashionably Late. Judging by the empty chairs at the banquet table and the idle chatter amongst the few remaining guests, it was quite evident that being fashionably late had passed several hours ago. The dozing bookkeeper gasped in surprise when he awoke to find the excruciatingly beautiful woman in the white mink fur coat looming over him. "Ladies and gentlemen, now introducing the guest of honor, Magi Norfrey," he declared. General Gordon rose to his feet. His officers and their aides quickly followed his lead. "Magi, you have finally come at last," General Gordon's voice boomed through the vaulted high ceiling as he quietly beckoned her to come and sit at the large table. One servant offered to take her coat, and another held his hand to help guide her down the flight of stairs, but her cold glare sent them both on their way. First impressions were important. Nora wasn't about to be seen being helped down the flight of stairs like some fragile, high-born flower or some old lady. And she certainly wasn't going to give up her coat. She did not plan on staying long, and secondly, nobody else was in uniform. General Gordon himself was reclining in his chair in a full-length, gold-trimmed, purple toga and sandals. However, despite the relaxed posture, his pronounced, offset, hawk-like nose, aggressive, sunken, calculating, beady black eyes, hard jaw, clean and level, short, silver hair, gave off an entirely different signal altogether. Nora reluctantly took a seat, ignoring the grinning faces of her peers. "How have you been settling in?" Gordon asked. The smart little comment and the stifled snickers from some of the not-so-sober fellow war mages quickly reminded her of the little yurt in the courtyard and why she had come in the first place. Nora's sharp blue eyes darted up from the rim of her glass, and with great deliberate poise and self-control, set the cup down without showering everyone with the fine crimson vapor of red wine, and responded in a calm, tranquil voice, "Very well, thank you." General Gordon smiled a devious smile. "Excellent. Try the caviar. It has been chilled on the freshest ice in all of Marne." Nora waved the caviar away. "I have already eaten, and there is a lot to go over," she insisted. While many might have been impressed with any kind of dish on ice, Nora was a farm girl, and she knew what fresh tasted like. Anything on ice could be weeks or even months old. "What's on your mind, Magi?" Gordon asked. Nora took in a deep breath through her thin nostrils before asking in a calm, focused voice, "First, I was told more recruits would be coming shortly. Second, when? And lastly, how long do I have until I'm expected to patrol all of Helvisti province with only half a regiment?" General Gordon perked up. "Not to worry," he assured her. "It's Mora's time now. We'll be getting recruits coming in sometime around Frey time," he explained. Mora was the goddess of fall, harvester of the dead souls, and known to make personal visitations to brave soldiers of valor before, during, or after they die. Frey was the goddess of winter, and conveniently married to Maltine, the tester of men. Recruits in winter, Nora remarked, doing so as carefully as she could, so that she would not be perceived to be challenging the decision while at the same time politely pressing for more information on why it was so. Yes, he chuckled. We have winter survival training camps up in the Baru Waste to toughen the recruits up. Not to worry. Every regiment cycles through and takes their turn going on patrol. Your regiment won't be due to leave on patrol until springtime. I made sure you would have a chance to get to know Helvisti before sending your regiment on patrol, he assured her. This caused Nora to let out a small, pent-up breath as she relaxed. While she was still quite annoyed with her housing situation, she was relieved she would not be thrown into the Baru waste before she was ready. Thankfully, she could rely on Vila for advice, as this God's forsaken, frozen wasteland was practically his backyard. She could sense him now, grinning as he waded through chest-deep snow like a newborn wolf pup. All she had to worry about now was the dragon squatting inside her house. She wasn't about to let Vila know or come back from his adventures to find her locked outside in some little tent. No, she was determined to be lounging in the lap of luxury, sipping on warm spice wine in front of a raging fireplace when he came limping back to her, all frostbitten and famished. "Do you have any more questions, Magi?" General Gordon inquired. Nora gave a polite, thin-lipped smile. "There is one delicate matter I hope to ask about concerning the dragon that I've been assigned to," she announced. "But I can wait for a better time to speak in private," she added. General Gordon smiled and knowingly gave a slight tap on his crooked nose and rose to his feet, but quickly encouraged the officers to remain seated before beckoning Nora to follow. "Come, let us walk and talk," he beckoned as he took the lead, and began to walk together along the warm hallways with rich, dark wood siding and tapestries of old battles, legends, and scenes of hunters taking deer and pheasants. "Please, what is on your mind, Magi?" Gordon asked. "I request permission to speak freely, General," Nora ventured. General Gordon smiled. "Denied," he responded in a cool, dry voice. "But do your best to formally make your inquiry known," he encouraged. Nora bristled and took in another cleansing breath to keep herself calm and poised. "Yes, General, I shall," she agreed, before carefully and painstakingly posed her next question without raising her voice or breaching polite dialogue and protocol that was expected from a subordinate. "I was wanting to know if you knew why there's a dragon living in my house," she asked. An amused smile flared across Gordon's lips. "Yes, because I gave the command to seal it up inside." Nora did her best to remain calm. "Dragons are not exactly good house pets," she remarked. "I don't imagine they would be," Gordon agreed, smiling as he let Nora suffer in silence before gracing her with the information that she was dying to ask for. But it had become quite the nuisance in the city and countryside. Lots of stolen sheep, horses, and damaged rooftops. When it moved in, I felt it was best and safest for everyone to keep it where it was, he said at last, and smiled as he glanced over, enjoying the look of deep concern over her face. Naturally, now that you are here, I'm sure you'll be able to handle the dragon situation, and when everything's in order, I'm sure the staff will return and gladly help you move in, he added. Do you have any other questions for me, Magi? Nora was still for a long moment. Thank you. May I be excused, General? She asked. Not until you answer my questions, he insisted. Of course, General, Nora agreed robotically. Do you know why you are here? Gordon asked. Nora felt a lump form inside her throat. Despite her shame, she stood tall and looked Gordon back in the eyes as she answered, My sword companion used his boon to grant me a pardon and spare my life. Now I am here, she confessed. Gordon chuckled softly. Almost true, he remarked. Nora frowned, but he went on to explain. It is true. Vila did request that you be pardoned, but I made it so for my own reasons, he declared. What reasons? Nora demanded, clearly suspicious of his intentions. It would not be the first time some highborn tried to pull some strings to coax her into bed. Most would have put this troublesome beast down long ago, and I was ready to do so. But Vila highly recommended that I give you a chance to see what you could do with it. Nora groaned inwardly. It is a difficult task to tame adult dragons once they have turned to kill livestock for pleasure, she lamented. I'm afraid I may be a disappointment, she sighed. General Gordon merely shrugged. The livestock is the least of my concerns. The dragon is more than a beast. It is the spirit of Helviste, and as far as I am concerned, perhaps the only one of its kind to be hatched in human hands in all of Marin. I cannot let it go free and terrorize the people, and Governor von Claris has made it abundantly clear that a great deal of the tribespeople revere it as a divine spirit, and has advised me to avoid killing it at all costs. Naturally, you have already lost one dragon. If it dies in your care, or goes on a killing spree, I will make certain that this is placed on your head, not mine. Do you understand? Shocked and overwhelmed, Nora forced herself to nod. I will do my best, but Gordon's stern gaze told her he wasn't interested in her best, just so long as it resulted in a happy, healthy dragon that didn't go around eating innocent civilians. I will see that the dragon you have entrusted me to is well taken care of. I will not fail, she assured him. General Gordon gave a nod of approval. You are dismissed. Nora gave a quick bow and gratefully took her leave. However, when she returned to the dining hall, she found Parvu had left without her. Cursing inwardly, and too proud to ask for a ride, Nora helped herself out the gate and began the long walk back home. Fortunately, it wasn't too far off. Well, not by carriage, it wasn't, but the long walk and fresh air was needed to clear her head. Part of her ached for Vila to be with her, yet part of her was glad she had the space to think. If Vila had been with her, he would have probably bonked several officers over the head and thrown General Gordon through a window. Nora smiled at the thought. It was a pleasant thought, but she needed to focus on her dragon problem. It was dusk when she finally got back. To her surprise, smoke was coming out of the little chimney. Inside the yurt was warm and cozy. Nora's concerns quickly melted away when she discovered the short note left on her bed. Warm greetings. I'll return in the morning with breakfast and more coal for the stove. May Helvisti bless you both. From Nadette, warm wishes. Nora smiled as she set the note on the nightstand next to the warm lantern and hung up her heavy fur coat. Nadette. She seemed like a very nice lady. She felt confident that Nadette was going to be her new best friend, and let out a heavy sigh before changing into her blue, full-length silk robe. She really needed a friend. Before, she had always been able to talk to Golden Eyes. She had raised the dragon from a hatchling, and he was very well behaved, not at all like this problem dragon doing gods know what inside her house. A warm caress went across her cheek. Nora smiled as she rested her head on the soft feather pillow. It was Vila. She closed her eyes. He was thinking of her. She smiled as she felt him drift away to sleep. Chapter 16. Visitors. In the morning, Nora awoke to the soft crackling sound of a small fire outside, followed by the rich aroma of freshly cooked oats. The wholesome smell brought a smile to her face as it woke the memory of her childhood back in Barlington, of fresh oats in the morning. Ever since she had become a dragon rider, she had gotten accustomed to posh, big breakfasts, eggs, bacon, sausage, and toast, with bright-colored jams and sweet preserves. It had been years since she had a simple, nice, warm bowl of oatmeal. With a smile, she pushed away the fur blankets and slipped her toes into the cozy, fur-lined moccasins. Vila had purchased them for her. Her mind went out to him. She felt the warm kiss to the forehead. She wanted to reach at him, smell his hair, but she forced herself to withdraw. The last thing she wanted was to distract him while he was climbing. On the other side of the embroidered canvas tent flap sat an old woman stirring a steaming pot of oatmeal with a wooden spoon. Her clothes were made of reindeer hide, and her hair was kept in a long gray frizzled ponytail. She had 3 vertical black lines on her chin, which Nora could not tell if they were tattoos or merely some type of temporary henna, which was quite fashionable in Gojin. Nora greeted her with a warm smile and a bright silver coin to show her gratitude. "You must be Nadette." The old woman frowned and regarded the silver in her hand as if she had been holding a bucket full of slugs. "How dare you!" she scowled. Nora had to move fast to avoid getting her hand swatted with a wet wooden spoon, but she was not fast enough to avoid the oatmeal residue splattering her blue silk robe and beautiful fur moccasins that Vila had given her. She stared down and gasped when she saw the gray little oat flecks that marred the rose made from tiny glass beads. The sudden shock and rage she felt was beyond words. Not Traja, not even General Samuel Gordon had managed to bring her this close to tears. and fill her with so much rage. Nora's fierce blue eyes narrowed, and she stood up to her full height, and her hand coiled back, threatening to slap the old woman if she continued to advance toward her with her sticky wooden spoon. "Where is Vila? Where is my son?" Nadette demanded. Stricken with shock, Nora gasped as she had been doused with a bucket of ice water. Immediately she stepped back, and the hand that had been poised to slap her mother-in-law shot upward and covered her gaping mouth. With wooden spoon in hand, Nadette advanced, and Nora wilted out of her way as Vila's mother barged into the yurt. "Where is he?" she demanded. "You called out his name, I heard you," she insisted angrily. Nora's face flashed bright red. "What? How long have you been out here?" she demanded. But this wasn't the answer Nadette wanted to hear. She pivoted back around, waddled outside, and brandished her wooden spoon toward her as if it was some kind of weapon. "Where is my son, you no-good witch?" she demanded. Nora had never been called such a derogatory name in her life. At least, not to her face by another grown adult, anyway. She was an educated war mage, not some old hag with some gimmick of reading tea leaves and seeing the future through crystal balls and cat scat. "For your information, I am a mage. I've been taught by the greatest mages in all of Marne. Vila is my sword companion, and if you so much as touch me again—" Nora hesitated. She wasn't entirely sure what she would do. Menru grant her mercy. She couldn't harm Vila's mother. Not physically, anyway. "If you so much as touch me, or call me that again, I will not tell you where your son is," she threatened. Nadette became still. Her dark, wild, beady eyes glared up at her, and she planted her hands on her hips. Nora ignored the bits of oatmeal that squished between her fingers as she folded her arms over herself, striking an air of confidence and assuming supreme victory. "Oh, forgive me. I didn't see your mage staff. Did you bring it with you?" the old woman asked. Nora smirked as she heard the inflection of worry in her voice. "For what?" she scoffed. The old woman's beady black eyes didn't blink as she gazed up at her and replied with a darkly amused calm voice, "For your protection, sweet child." Nora felt a chill run down her spine when she sensed power radiating from the old woman, but it was gone as soon as she detected it. Refusing to be cowed, Nora stood her ground. "I didn't even know Vila had a mother. He never mentioned you at all. How do I know you are his real mother?" she asked with a dismissive sniff as she idly glanced toward her fingernails. Nadette's confident demeanor faded, and if it was at all possible, her beady black eyes darkened, and she became downcast, and she turned to walk away. Nora immediately wished she could cram the ugly words back into her mouth, but it was too late, and she had to run to catch up with her. "Wait, don't go," she shouted as she waded through fresh, ankle-deep snow that melted into her moccasins. "I'm so sorry. That was an awful lie. He talks about you often," she apologized. "Vila said he was going on a pilgrimage to Helvisti. He'll be back soon," she added. Nadette turned and smiled back up at her daughter-in-law. "Please forgive me, Mother Nadette," Nora begged. Nadette gave a wounded but kindly smile toward Nora. "It is I that must beg your forgiveness. "Sweet child," she insisted. Tears welled up in Nora's eyes, and she quickly shook her head. "No, not at all. You didn't do anything wrong," she assured her, and gave her a warm embrace. "Oh, but I did," she groaned wretchedly. "It's nothing, sweet mother. It is but water under the bridge. Please come inside and have some tea," she insisted. Nadette gave her a kindly smile. "Oh, dear, I would love to, but I can't," she lamented. "Why ever not, sweet mother?" "Because I set your yacht on fire," Nadette confessed. Nora spun around. Black plumes of smoke rose into the air as great yellow flames rose and lapped at the canvas. "Oh, if I be a properly trained mage like you, I would have put it out, I swear I would," Nadette lamented. But Nora was already frantically sprinting back across the courtyard, desperately trying to beat out the flames with her robe. She at least had her chemise beneath it, and sacrificing her robe to save everything else inside was a small price she was willing to pay. Thankfully, Nadette, despite being the one setting her cozy yurt on fire, came to the rescue with a large wooden bucket of water. While the yurt was utterly ruined and a giant gaping black hole allowed for wind, rain, and snow to come through, most of her belongings, minus her singed robe, were able to be rescued. It wasn't long until Nora sat shivering with a large fur blanket over herself inside her ruined yurt, panting softly as little flurries continued to circle down inside. Nadette meekly set a large wooden bowl of oatmeal down in front of Nora, and quietly joined her on the other blackened chair next to the gaping hole in the yurt. Nora quietly warmed her shivering pink fingertips onto the wooden bowl. Once her breathing slowed, something struck her as quite odd. She glanced toward the arsonist, who also happened to be her mother-in-law, with suspicion. Such a frail old woman. Nora would have gotten a water bucket as well, but there hadn't been time. Everything would have been lost. "How did you draw the water so fast?" The wrinkly old crone stared at her with shocked, frightened, beady little black eyes. "I got it from the well nearby, dearest child," she responded meekly. Nora's eyes narrowed with suspicion. She didn't say anything. She looked away and briefly glanced down at her short little legs dangling from the chair. She couldn't help but wonder how a woman so tiny could give birth to such a great hulking beast of a man. Still, those hard, determined, ebony black eyes definitely seemed to run in the family. "Are you planning on having any children soon?" Nadette inquired. Completely taken off guard, Nora blinked, shocked at the question. I sometime soon, but we have been so busy," she lied. Truthfully, they had been trying for some time. The thought saddened her and made her feel uncomfortable. Nadette smiled and nodded approvingly, most likely taking the answer however she wanted to hear it. "I, of course, can't raise children in a charred yurt," she added pointedly. Nadette wilted under the accusatory glare. Nora straightened up. Finally, she was victorious, and she wasn't ever going to let her live it down. "So, does Vila know any magic like you do?" she asked curiously. Nadette gripped her wooden spoon and began to fidget. "Well, not like you and I have," she replied. "Would you like some tea, daughter?" Nora was a bit surprised by the statement. The old hag was addressing her as if she were somehow equals. No, she was actually talking down to her. That was what she was really doing. "Would you like White or black tea, star child? Came Nadette's disturbingly calm, soothing, motherly voice inside her head. Nora bristled. Suddenly she felt violated, dirty, and then very angry. "How dare you!" she exclaimed. "Is this your first time away from Founder's Keep, child?" Nadette teased. Nora wanted to throw the oatmeal at her, but right then Nadette came in with a piping hot kettle of tea. Nora did not remember the kettle. Nadette had somehow boiled the water without even uttering a single spell. She didn't even have a wand. She warily eyed the large wooden spoon in Nadette's shriveled hand. "How did—" she began, but she glanced away. She had just, after all, put out the fire, and she couldn't exactly challenge her mother-in-law to a mage duel. What would she tell Vila when he got back? "Sorry, I set your mother on fire, but you could have told me she was a witch." Nadette's beady black eyes sparkled like black diamonds. Nora suddenly felt very uncomfortable. "What do you mean? Does Vila know magic or not?" she pressed, determined to speak everything up front, to keep from having her mind probed. Magic is everywhere, child. In every breath, in every word, every thought, song and dance, in the wind, fire and stone," she answered calmly. Nora bridled her tongue. She had quickly learned in Founder's Keep, as an apprentice mage, that magic wasn't at all wishy-washy as some might think it was. Every crusty old soothsayer and charlatan would have said some version of what Nadette had just said. "Have you ever seen Vila cold? Ever seen him come back from a hunt empty-handed?" Nadette asked with a secret smug smile on her face. Nora wriggled about in her chair, but she could not deny it. She had assumed Vila was just tough as nails. Well, he was, but there was plenty of strong men who couldn't do what he could. Vila could go out and walk barefoot on ice as if it were summer out. It was then she felt cheated and angry. "But Vila said he had to complete his pilgrimage without magic!" she exclaimed. Nadette gave a long, thoughtful hum, and an amused tisk with the few remaining snaggled teeth she had. "Some magic is more natural than others, and isn't appreciated by the big book mages, so I could see why he might say that, so you wouldn't feel offended," she sighed. Nora glowered at the old woman. Do you need any help coaxing the dragon out?" Nadette inquired with a secret smile, as she blew on the hot cup of tea in her hands before taking a sip. "Did Vila put you up to this?" Nora demanded. Nadette's beady black eyes peered from over the rim of her white porcelain cup as she took another contemplative sip. Nora waited for an answer, but the old woman held her silence. "No, I don't need your help," Nora insisted, and then paused. "And what would you know about dragons anyway? How could you possibly help me? Have you ever ridden a dragon before?" she inquired. Nadette smiled as she neatly set the empty teacup on the table. "I understand," she said at last, and rose from her chair. "My apologies again for the tent. It was very childish of me," she added as she tucked her wooden spoon away, fetched her cane, and hopped onto her mule, and commenced the slow trek back down the winding mountainside road. Just when Nora let out an agitated sigh of relief, she heard the distant threshing of dragon wings beating in the air. Part of her panicked as she half expected to see the horrid, crusty old crone taking off via dragon. But when she looked up, her eyes became alight with excitement as she immediately recognized Prince. Chapter 17. A Friend Indeed. Chapter 17. A Friend Indeed. Simmons' dragon circled around as he prepared to land. Just when Nora was about to wave, a sudden gust of cold air reminded her that she was only in a silk nightgown that barely reached midway down her thighs. In a panic, Nora rushed over to her wardrobe and quickly jumped into her forest green trousers. No time to find anything else, she changed from her wet leather moccasins into her riding boots, threw her red scarf and white mink coat on, and ran out to meet him. It seemed like ages since the last time she had seen anyone from Glendon or Founder's Keep. Simmons was like a brother to her. After old man Don Rascal passed away, he was the glue that kept everyone together. Nora grinned. She didn't even care about being blasted by the wind and snow from his dragon's powerful wings. The moment the tall, spindly man hopped down, she greeted him with an embrace. "Simmons! Sprigga be praised! What are you doing here?" she gasped. While she was happy to see him, she began to worry something dreadful might have happened. Simmons let out a hearty chuckle as he put up his frost-rimmed riding goggles. "Not to worry, I'm just here to visit," he assured her. "You flew so far? How long are you staying?" she asked. Simmons chuckled. "Nonsense." Prince was happy to get the exercise after being cooped up so long. Nora beamed happily as she hurriedly led Simmons over to the nesting area so she could tend to the excited young bull drake and helped him take off the saddlebags and unbuckle the saddle. "You must be starving," Nora chimed excitedly, but her excitement melted away into absolute dread. At that moment, all she had to offer her dear friend and dragon rider was in her charred yurt. Simmons grinned and glanced about, smiling up at the large mansion in front of him. "I'm famished," he chuckled, and glanced over toward the nervous Nora, who was shifting about worriedly in the snow, and turned and saw the blackened little yurt in the courtyard. "Would you like some tea and oatmeal?" she ventured. Simmons blinked. He looked at the boarded-up mansion. He looked at the charred yurt. He looked back at the mansion, and then back at the yurt. All right," he agreed. He was clearly curious, but out of pure politeness, decided not to ask. "Whoa, this is really tasty. It's been ages since I've had a good bowl of oatmeal. Nothing like it after a long flight," he chimed happily. Nora forced herself to smile. "Did you make it yourself?" he asked. Nora's smile stiffened as she fidgeted with the silver teaspoon on the little round table. Not exactly. My mother-in-law came to visit. You just missed her," she explained. "Ah, I see you're testing to make sure it's not poisoned, aren't you?" he remarked sarcastically. Nora abruptly burst out laughing and quickly settled down after noting the worried expression on her friend's face. "No, of course not," she teased, and quickly ladled in some oatmeal into her own bowl, stabbing it with her spoon as she smiled over toward Simmons. Aren't you going to eat any?" Simmons asked. Nora glanced down. I'm just letting it cool down," she insisted, as she ventured a tiny bite of the heavily salted oatmeal. Simmons offered a nervous smile, and then resigned himself to his fate and polished off the rest of the oatmeal. So, he glanced upward at the burn hole in the side of the yurt. Yes, there was a small fire, Nora confessed. Simmons nodded. I see that. Anything I can do to help? He asked. Nora shook her head and sighed. No. Supposedly, the dragon that I have been assigned to is a cantankerous little snood. And General Gorton thought it would be a good idea to seal him up inside the mansion so he couldn't get out and terrorize the townsfolk, she explained. Simmons grimaced. I see. This sounds like a problem dragon, he remarked. Nora nodded. Until I figure out what to do with him, I'm stuck in this little charred hut. All the staff have long gone, and they probably won't be back until I'm able to reclaim the estate. She sighed and quickly brightened up. She didn't want to overburden her friend after traveling so far to see her. How about you? What's new with you? She asked. Simmons smiled. Well, we've had some interesting events happen over at Founders. Do you remember that bull drake that attacked you? She asked. Nora's smile faded. Clearly she had. Simmons grimaced, suddenly feeling rather foolish for even bringing up the sensitive topic, but it was too late now. Well, it came back, so we had to keep everyone grounded until we were finally able to deal with it, he explained. Did you kill it? Nora asked. Simmons grimaced. Not exactly. Irene convinced the team to let her try and call it in, he confessed. Nora's thin nostrils flared as she sat back in her chair, clearly frazzled and very upset. Are you serious? Simmons nodded. So far, things have gone well. Warren took Rex to Gojin, and I took the long route to come check on you, he smiled. Nora tried to smile back. She was happy to see Simmons. But the thought of Golden Eyes' killer being called in and serenaded by the empty-headed young twit with the harp seemed so wrong on so many levels. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up, Simmons apologized. That creature is evil. It will turn on you, she warned. I'm worried as well, but everyone is keeping close watch, he assured her. Nora responded with a long, deep, agitated sigh that was followed by a sharp, uncomfortable silence. There wasn't anything she could do or say that would improve things. She was, for the time being, effectively and indefinitely banished from Founders for life, or until something so dreadful happened that she had to scold herself and shudder for even thinking or finding pleasure in such a dark thought. A long, deep blast of a ram's horn resonated from on top of the great Helvisti lighthouse. Shortly after, a dozen riders came galloping hard down the winding trail and past the open gate. Simmons turned to Nora, but she shook her head. She had no idea what was going on. Perhaps a drill, she suggested, but just as she spoke, one of the riders in a dappled gray mare peeled off and rode into the courtyard. Both Nora and Simmons rose to their feet. Bad news! There's trouble in Glendon! General Gordon has ordered every regiment to send one battalion to assist any way they can. This order is effective immediately, the messenger declared. Simmons' face grew gaunt and pale. He turned toward Nora as she grimly accepted the sealed document. She could tell the orders had been written with great haste. Inside, the ink had barely a chance to dry. While it had taken a single day for Simmons to fly over, it would take well over 2 weeks to get there by ferry, and a month to march over land. As she remembered Vila telling her, the Helvetii Straits would freeze during the winter. It was absolutely wretched to imagine how cold it had to get for salt water to freeze. Regardless, any fighting forces would arrive too late. Nora took in a deep breath as she sat down at her little table and found a quill and inkwell inside the small wooden box. "Whoever I send will arrive late," she mused out loud. She pressed the feather to her forehead that was visibly creased with lines of grim, palatable concern. But perhaps if Major Gustavo and his engineers hurry, he'll be in time to patch things up, she declared as she finished writing the orders and then finally stamped the envelope with her personal signet ring that had an image of a sleeping dragon on top of an 8-pointed nautical star. "What is your name, messenger?" Nora demanded. "I'm Sergeant Bascom, Magi," he declared. "Sergeant Bascom, you will personally deliver this and report back to me with a personal, signed, and sealed letter of confirmation. Do you understand?" she insisted sternly. "Understood, Magi." Nora grimly handed over the orders. "See to it," she commanded. Bascom stuffed the orders into his coat and gave a swift salute before urging his horse forward. Once the messenger was gone, Nora turned worriedly back over toward Simmons. His face was gaunt, and he looked as if he would be ill. "You shouldn't go yet. At least wait till nightfall. It might be nothing, and if you go now, you wouldn't have the strength to do anything, or be any use to anyone when you arrived." Simmons shook his head. Torn was right. I have to go. I have to deal with the consequences. "If it's the dragon, there's nothing you can do. If it's still out there, it'll just kill you. And Prince, we can't afford to lose you," Nora shouted after him. Simmons pulled away from her and threw open the heavy wooden doors. "You would have told me to do the same," Nora insisted. "And you would have ignored me," Simmons grunted. "Not if Don Rascal were here, you wouldn't." Simmons stiffened. Old man Don Rascal had been a second father to everyone. "He's dead," he replied, but the sternness in his voice wavered. She had hit her mark. "And Torn? If Torn was here instead of me?" she asked. Simmons stoically grabbed his saddle from on top of the wooden barrel. "What if you had lost Prince, and you were in my place? And Torn was going out as well," she pleaded. Simmons slowed, and a grim smile formed across his lips. "Torn wouldn't listen to anyone," he chuckled. "He would have listened to you. Besides, both you and your dragon are worn out," Nora insisted, as she pointed toward Prince, who was curled up in a tight ball. Simmons turned and glanced toward his dragon. One big sleepy eyelid drowsily peered up at him. "All right, just for the day," he agreed. Nora's smile all but vanished as Prince's long, lithy neck leaned up over the wooden panels and snatched up the leather saddle. Simmons shouted in surprise. "Hey, no, that's not a chew toy, damn it!" he snapped. Prince spat out the saddle and let out a flustered blast from his nostrils. "Impressive. He actually listened," Nora marveled. Simmons grimaced as he glanced at the bite marks all over the leather saddle. Not exactly. I just saturated the leather with the worst tasting thing imaginable, he explained. What is that? She asked. Oil of dragon's bane, he declared. Nora frowned. Dragon's bane was extremely toxic. But won't that? She began worriedly. Not if you dilute it. It's just enough to ruin his day, Simmons explained proudly. Nora wasn't entirely sure what to make of this, but she was happy Simmons wasn't going to rush back. Such a long flight in itself could be deadly even without other complications and feral dragons attacking him. Judging by the tired rings in his eyes, Simmons hadn't slept at all last night, or the night before. All it would take was for him to drift asleep and plummet to his death, and no one would ever know what had happened to him or where to find him. Where did you learn that? She demanded. Simmons grinned. I raise sheep in Takron. It's an old trick, he declared. Nora's eyes went wide. When was this? She spluttered. I thought everyone knew, Simmons laughed. Of course, it's a win-win for everyone. The shepherds don't want to leave their flock to go all the way into town every time their sheep get snatched, and I don't particularly care to pay 10 times the amount for some shepherd's prized ram or ewe. Somehow, dragons always seem to eat the expensive prized winning sheep, he chuckled. But that could make them horribly sick. It's not like we can't afford to compensate them. We always do, Nora protested. Simmons nodded. Well, that might be true in some provinces, but in Takron there are lots of mountains, hills, and caves. As you can imagine, it's prime hunting grounds for feral dragons, and you can't complain or get money out of a feral dragon. It's also illegal to kill them, so the next best thing is to discourage them. Luckily, most dragons are quick learners, he explained, and let out a big, tired yawn. Nora shook her head and sighed. You need to rest. I'll get you some blankets, and you can sleep in the hayloft. It will be warm up there, she insisted. Simmons chuckled. Where are you going to sleep, he teased. Nora glared at him. While you get some rest, I'm going to give this problem dragon his eviction notice, and hopefully by tonight I will be curled up in a nice feather bed in front of a bright, warm fireplace, she announced confidently. Need any help? Simmons asked. Nora smiled. Yes, get some sleep. And if you find that everything is in order in Glendon, please relay the message to Major Gustavo and save him some traveling. I'm already short-handed as it is, but as for today, I need the dragon to focus on me, and right now, you'll just be a sleepy, sluggish liability and major distraction, she insisted as she pushed him toward the hayloft. Simmons grinned. All right. Try not to set anything on fire, he encouraged her. Chapter 18. Into the Dragon's Den. Hello, I haven't forgot about you. I know it's been a long time since I uploaded. It takes a while to upload these YouTube videos, especially when you don't have internet. And where I'm at is pretty cold. It has been pretty cold. And I've been uploading in the library parking lot. And it takes a while. It takes a couple hours and at night. But on the good side, good news is that the book is formatted and is out on Amazon. I'll put a link below. And so that's been really exciting. A lot of fun stuff's going on over here, but won't talk about that. Um, but interesting times, some tough times, but that's all right. We'll get through this, and even if we don't, then we don't have to worry about anything anymore. But if you're sick, or if you know someone that's sick, you can feel free to share this audiobook. Maybe I don't know, maybe it'll help a little bit. Maybe pass some time. Or if you just want to, enjoy the adventure, that's okay too. But if you want to, support this, be a part of the adventure and support me, you can. The book is on Amazon. I'll leave the link below, and if you want to get an ebook or paperback, that's completely up to you. And but I do appreciate everyone that does purchase a book, because in the age of information, you don't have to read really. All you need is a library card, and you got all the classics at your fingertips. But I do appreciate your support, and yeah. But just want to say thanks for sticking around. It's a small channel right now, and I appreciate every subscriber, every thumbs up. And it'll be a journey. It's gonna be a long journey, and is it every journey starts somewhere. I'm trying to think of something smart to say, but I can't think of anything right now. But yeah, summer's coming, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but where I'm at, it's kind of a nice thing. It's been a cold winter. It's been a cold, dark winter, and I can't wait to hear the birds and come out and see the sun, see the flowers, and keep typing, keep doing audiobooks, and I'll see you later.